Alrighty, so you are viewing this video now after you have read this article, How Are Circles Used in Real Life, and had a discussion in class or a turn and talk. And I hope you enjoyed it a little bit. It's not a huge article. There's definitely lots of other examples of how circles are used in real life. But I'd have to say for me, my favorite is reading about the architecture. I know that I like to visit different churches, older churches, cathedrals, and just see all the beautiful the concrete that has been cut in forms of circles, or the stained glass windows that have the beautiful pictures and shapes, again, of circles or semicircles. That's one of my favorite things to see. I get to go to St. Andrew's Cathedral in Grand Rapids on Sunday this week for my daughter's confirmation, and I'm really looking forward to just being there and just looking at the beautiful architecture that's in that building. And then also, I enjoyed understanding, like NASA, they use pi, they use that 3.14, they use that irrational number that just keeps going and going and going and never ends to be able to determine the size of distant planets and measuring craters. And then, of course, like my video gamers, like how cool is that the knowledge of circles, transferring a two-dimensional idea to a three-dimensional format for just virtual developing these virtual worlds for their games, and that's super cool. So I hope you got a little bit of enjoyment out of that article before we actually now head into the lesson itself. So this is on page 613, and I said you needed to have this book page open, your pencil, and your calculator ready to go. And you'll see right away on page 613 that same circle that you yesterday on your worksheet had to identify some key parts to the circle that we're going to use and we need to know. So for example, we can fill this in again real quickly. The worksheet that you turned into your crew teachers, you'll get that back by Thursday. I'm just going through, or we're going through and just checking to see that they're complete and putting some grades in the grade book, and you'll get those back so that you can use those for your notes as well. But remember, in the video and on your sheet, you should have identified that center point, right, on that circle as your center. And then it talked also about radius and diameter. And your diameter is where that line goes from one end of the circle all the way to the other end. Again, that's your diameter. And then lastly, the radius, which is really half the diameter, starts at that center point and goes to one end of the circle. And your radius can look different each time, meaning it doesn't always have to look like what you see here shown in the picture. The radius can be drawn many different ways as long as it starts in the center of that circle and extends to the end of the circle, one end of the circle. So let's talk for a few minutes about radius and diameter. So we're going to go to page 614 at the top here. And this is a key concept for us for sure, because we definitely use both. They're crucial for us to understand how to be able to calculate the circumference of a circle, the perimeter around a circle, as well as when we get into area inside the circle in the next few days as well. So it says the diameter, D, of a circle is twice its radius, R. Diameter of a circle is twice its radius, R. So D, diameter, equals twice the radius. Let's look at an example of that. Look at example number 2. So it says the radius of a circle is 8 feet. Find the diameter. Well, if we know the diameter is twice the radius, if the radius is 8 and we double that so that we can get that line to go all the way across that circle, then your diameter would be 16 feet in this case. Now, another side of that is, let's say the radius R of a circle is half of its diameter D. The radius is half of the diameter. So this here where you see R equals D divided by 2, that's just saying to get your radius, take that diameter and cut it in half, divide it by 2. So look at example 1 with that. The diameter of a circle is 14 inches. Find the radius. Well, if you see that diameter going from one end of the circle to the other, and it's showing 14 inches total, if you need that radius, cut that in half. So half of 14, that's going to give you 7 inches for the radius in this case. Okay. So let's practice that a little bit more. So go down to the got it right here. So it says, do these problems to find out. Find the radius or diameter of each circle with the given dimensions. So letter A, you have a diameter of 23 centimeters. So I'm going to try, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do a great job of this, to draw a circle with this pen. So I'm going to do the best I can. Okay, so what I'm going to do is draw these as we do each one the best that I can underneath. So, oh, there we go. Oops, I was having a little issue with the connecting. Sorry about that. All right, so let's get the shape drawn. So I'm going to draw a circle best I can here. See if it, there we go. And while I'm at it, let me see if I can get one on each one here. Like that. And so now in letter A, if the diameter is 23 centimeters, see if it lets me do this. So let's say this is the diameter in letter A, and that's 23 centimeters. I need to know the radius. I need to find the radius, radius in that. So that means I need to take half of that diameter, half of it. So the radius, divide it by 2. And so again, if that's why you have your calculators next to you. 23 divided by 2 would give you 11.5. So I'm going to come over here. Your radius, which is half that circle, is 11.5 centimeters. You're given the diameter, cut it in half to find the radius. Letter B, the radius is 3 inches. So again, let me see if I can get a radius drawn in here, like that. Kind of. So half. And so if the radius is 3 inches, we need the diameter to go all the way across. So we need to multiply it by 2, double it. So your diameter, because that's what you're looking for, you're finding the opposite. The diameter in this case would be 6 inches. Okay, letter C. The diameter is 16 yards. This line thing, it's not the greatest, but trying to make it straight for you guys. So there's your diameter of 16 yards. So if you have that diameter going all the way across and you need the radius, you need the opposite of that, cut it in half, right? Find half of that line, half of that diameter. Your radius is going to be 8 yards. Okay, letter D. The radius is 5.2. So that means half. So I'll try the radius a little differently this time. And so if that radius is 5.2, half of it, you need the diameter. You need it all the way across the circle. Double it, multiply it by 2. So 5.2 times 2 is going to give you a diameter of 10.4. It doesn't give me a unit this time, so just 10.4. So you're doing the opposite of what's given to you. If you have the diameter, you're finding the radius. If you have the radius, you're finding the diameter. All right, so I'm gonna have you try a couple. So let's go to page, guided practice, and you're going to look on page 616 and just do 1, 2, and 3. And you're either going to find the radius or the diameter given the dimensions. Now, you don't have to draw a circle like I did on my examples that I just showed you. I just wanted to give you a visual. If you need that visual, then draw yourself a circle. And then also, like in number 1, if you're given the diameter, go ahead and draw the diameter in. If you need the visual, it's not a must. You don't have to. And then find that radius. Okay. Number 2, you're going to find the diameter because you're given the radius. And number 3, you're going to find the radius because you're given the diameter. So take a minute and go ahead and find those, and then meet me back with the answers to check your work. Okay, so let's see how you did. Number 1, you should have gotten a radius of 1.5 meters because since you have the diameter, you want to be able to cut that in half and find the radius, which is half the diameter, 1.5 meters. Number 2, you're given the radius of 14 feet. You need the diameter, so you need to be able to double that amount. And so the diameter on that circle from one end to the other is 28 feet. Number 3, the diameter is 20 inches. And so since you have that, you want to be able to cut that in half, divide it by 2, and find the radius of 10 inches. So we're going to stop there with the radius and diameter practice. The next thing we're going to look at, because I want to start to apply the formula with you and start to introduce it to you a little bit. When we finish some examples with the formula for circumference, like I said earlier on the agenda, you're actually going to practice this radius and diameter a little bit more in Schoology here as your last piece of today's lesson. So we're going to flip back in the book. And we're going to go to, trying to find, there it is, page 615 at the top. We're going to talk about the formula for circumference, So before I go through an example with you and talk about the formula, I'm actually going to show you this quick video on how to calculate the circumference of a circle and how diameter and radius play a part of that. So we're going to start with this. It's under a minute, and then we'll continue in the book.
To calculate the circumference of a circle, use the formula C equals pi times d, where C is the circumference, d is the diameter, and pi is 3.14. If you have the radius instead of the diameter, multiply it by 2 to get the diameter. You can also use the formula for the circumference of a circle using the radius, which is C equals 2 pi r, where r is the radius. For example, if the radius of a circle is 4 inches, multiply 4 by 2 to get the diameter, which is 8 inches. Then, plug the diameter into the C equals pi times d formula. Finally, multiply pi times 8 to find that the circumference of your circle is 25.12 inches.
Okay, so that's just one example of looking at using that formula on circumference. Now, at the top of page 615, let's talk about what you just saw. So, circumference, the circumference of a circle is equal to pi times its diameter, or pi times twice its radius. Now, the formula that we're going to stick with here, they give you 2, but this one right here, we're going to use, and still with the understanding that if we're given the radius, we're just going to have to double it to get the diameter. So the C circumference equals pi, 3.14, times that diameter of the circle. So one way that I use to remember this, so I'm just going to write this back over here again, pi times diameter. I use this little saying, okay? And if it helps, awesome. It just helps you remember the formula. So cherry, pie, delicious. So your C, right there, for cherry represents the C for circumference. The pi, as in pie you would eat, represents the pi Greek symbol in the formula. D in delicious represents D for diameter. So I've had students in the past go, well, cherry pie is not delicious. And I've said, fine. If you don't want to say cherry pie delicious, you could say cherry pie disgusting because it still starts with a D. Or maybe you just don't like cherry. Maybe you change it to chocolate as long as it starts with a C. Chocolate pie delicious. As long as you're connecting each letter with a part of that formula. C, circumference, cherry. Pi, the Greek symbol. D, diameter, delicious. Okay, it just, again, it helps you connect to the formula and understand it, and hopefully just remember it a little bit easier. So let's try a couple of these and see how we do. So we won't get into it a lot today. We're gonna do a lot more on Thursday when we do the second part of this lesson, but let's at least try it. So we'll try an example of each. I'm on the Got It on page 615, and we're gonna try E and F. We're gonna try one with, actually, you know what? We're not gonna do a fraction. Hold tight on that. Let's see, let me try a better one. There we go. Let's go guided practice instead. So guided practice is on page 616. So let's do number 4 and number 5, because this gives us an example of a diameter and one with a radius where we can use this formula. Now let's look at the directions for a minute. Find the circumference of each circle, use 3.14 or 22 over 7 for pi, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth if necessary. Now, let's talk about pi, that Greek symbol. So we know pi as a Greek symbol it's an irrational number that keeps repeating over, or not repeating, going on and on and on and on, never repeating. So 3.14 is just the shortened version of it, right? It just helps you make it a little easier to calculate. It's just a shorter version. The 22 over 7, it actually still is 3.14. The 22 over 7, you would use this in your calculations if you were working with fractions within your radius or your diameter. So if you saw that in your circles, then the 22 over 7 is a good way to use it with those fraction calculations. Now, we won't worry about 22 over 7 because really we probably won't do many, if any at all, with fractions this year. I'm going to show you two things. We can use 3.14, but we can also use the pi key on your calculator. There's two ways to do it. If you use the pi key on your calculator, it gives you the most accurate answer that you can get. If you use 3.14, again, it just rounds it a little bit for you. So let's stick to today. Let's use 3.14. And then because I can't show you where the pi key is on your calculator, even though you might be able to see it when you look at it right now, I will plan on Thursday when we do some more circumference problems, being able to use the camera and show you the calculations using the pi key with the calculator on the camera. Right now, we'll stick with this. We'll use this 3.14 right here. All right, I'm going to write down the formula again for both, right? So C equals pi times diameter. Cherry pie delicious. So we're going to find that circumference. Now remember, what we're going to find is the perimeter around the circle, the distance going around the circle. So since we're going to use this 3.14, I'm just going to put that in for the pi times. I'm going to do that over here too. We're going to use the abbreviated version today. Now we have to plug in the diameter for this formula to work so that we can find that circumference. So if you look at number 4, we have the diameter. The diameter is 15 meters. So I can multiply by 15 here. That's it. That's all I have to do now is use my calculator and find the abbreviated version, the rounded version of this perimeter circumference around the circle. So on your calculator, 3.14, type in times 15. And when the directions said round to the nearest tenth, if you notice when you multiply this on your calculator, you're going to see an answer of 47.1. And that's it. It stops. That's all you see on your calculator, and it's actually already rounded to the nearest tenth. So 47.1 meters is the perimeter, the circumference around that circle. Now, number 5. Here you're given the radius, right? So the radius is 7 yards. Now we need the diameter in the formula. So now, knowing what we just practiced a few minutes ago, let's find that diameter. Remember, radius is half. The diameter is all the way across. So that means we need to double that. So we're going to take that 7 and multiply it by 2. So our diameter is 14 yards. And so now we use that in our formula. We plug that 14 yards in for the diameter in the formula. All right, so once again, we're going to use the rounded version, the shortened version of pi. So 3.14 times 14. Now here, you're going to see an answer of 43.96 that comes out on your calculator. Now, if you round to the nearest tenth, like it's asking you to, that means you're looking in the hundredths. You're looking at that 6, and that 6 is going to tell you what to do to that 9 so that you round it correctly. In this case here, that's going to round that up, and so you are going to have a circumference of 44 yards. Final. Distance around the circle, perimeter around the circle. Again, both of those examples were done using 3.14, not the actual pi key. We'll do more of that on Thursday. So I actually want to stop here because, like I had said, let me come back to the agenda. At this point, what I want you to do is go into Schoology and practice this identifying radius and diameter. Go in and do these 10 questions here and find the radius or find the diameter. Just again, to understand and practice and know that you understand how to find them. So that'll be the last thing that you're doing today. And then after you're done, just look at your chapter 8 graded checklist. There we go. To make sure you're on track. And so notice so far there's going to be 2 Alex lessons within this chapter, including this week's. The circles worksheet from yesterday has to be turned in, your mid-year review in Schoology, and then this practice here today. So that is it for me today. We're going to stop at this point. And so use the remainder of your time to work on the Schoology assignment for today. And I will see you back on Thursday morning.